I am very excited to be coming to you on the 1 year anniversary of uploading my first BookTube video. Who knew that an introvert could do this? Yeah. I thought about it for a long time and got a lot of encouragement from my other friends that already had BookTube channels, and I thank them. And I can't believe it's been a year. I asked for some questions, some get to know me better questions, book related, not book related was totally fine. And you didn't let me down. I got some from some friends, BookTube, Instagram. Thanks for sending them. And I just want to start off by saying that for me, having my BookTube channel has been the best part of the last year. And y'all are a part of that, and watching my videos, liking them, commenting, those kind of things are just, so let's get right into the questions. What are some of the first books you remember reading? I remember reading when I was really little, the Berenstain Bear books. I think I had all of them because that's what everybody would get me books for birthdays or Christmas or whatever. And then I read the Sleepover Friends was kind of my next thing I graduated to. And then the Babysitter's Club. And I never really got too much into Sweet Valley High. My sister read some of those. But I can't remember what I read after that. After like the Babysitter's Club, I feel like I went into probably stuff I should not have been reading. I started getting into mysteries and thrillers. Read some Mary Higgins Clark. My mom was the big reader in our family, and so I would just pick things off her shelf. So I read some Danielle Steele, some Nora Roberts, things like that. So yeah, that's kind of what I remember reading. What is my favorite genre? So it depends on the day. Honestly, I was thinking about this earlier when I was writing down the questions from my comment section and Instagram post, that I kind of go through ups and downs with different genres that I'm into. And from what I've seen of booktubers that have had channels for several years, as we all kind of go through that, I would say like today, my favorite genre is contemporary fiction, literary fiction. I'm kind of on a horror, thriller, dystopian. Those are always kind of, if I can't think of, or if I'm not interested in reading something, I will go to mystery or thriller. Horror, I do like kind of light horror. I don't like body horror. So yeah, I mean, if I had to choose one, I would say literary fiction, I think. I don't know. One of those. Do you prefer physical, audio, or digital? Physical. I have not, actually didn't really get into audiobook listening until I feel like I got into audiobooks when I started watching BookTube. I used to try audiobooks, but I couldn't stay focused on it. My mind would wander on what's in front of me. Now I find audiobooks really helpful if I'm having a bad health flare and, physically holding the book or focusing on the word is difficult. audiobooks are really helpful, and they help me focus on something other than whatever symptoms I'm feeling. So I listen to a fair amount of audiobooks now. Digital, I'm trying to get into digital mainly for NetGalley because, a lot of the NetGalley ARCs, they're offering audio now, but most of the ARCs are digital. I don't have a Kindle or Kobo or any of the e-readers. I might look into trying one. Right now, I have a small computer, like laptop thing, but it's not the easiest to navigate. And I really think I need to get that computer checked out because it's just not operating like I want to. So I would like to get into digital. I think because I also, for work, read a lot of documents on the screen, that's probably why it's not my go-to or what I prefer. Yeah. So tell us more about your college experience, like your school major, how far from home you went, what I was into. So I didn't go far for college. For my undergrad degree, I went to West Georgia, which is like almost to the Alabama line. And I majored in English literature. I was one of the few in my program, or maybe the only one in my cohort, that was not going to be a teacher. I wanted to be a journalist, a writer. And yeah, I think I've mentioned that I majored in American literature, and more specifically, Edith Wharton. I did a project on her. I did a project on The Awakening by Kate Chopin, and I did a project on Charles Chestnut, who is an African American writer from, I want to say, the late 1800s, early 1900s. I might be totally off on that. Might be earlier. And then my big project I did on a diary memoir. Go figure. One of my favorite. Oh, that is one of my favorite genres, memoir. I totally forgot about that. I don't know why. Yeah, so I ended up doing my big project on Alice James. She was the sister of William and Henry James. Henry James we know of for like Portrait of a Lady, I think is his most popular. And William James was big into psychology, and that field, was a writer in that field. And Alice James, she was unmarried, and she had poor health. And there weren't a lot of options for her at the time. And so she wrote this diary, and a lot of it was letters to this person or letters to her brothers, and Henry said this and William said that, and, but she has the same intellect as her brothers, but there were no options for her because she was a woman and she was unmarried. And that really kind of drew me in, piqued my interest. Then I went to graduate school. So I worked for a little while as a PR writer, and ended up, I was doing these stories about people who had survived cancer, and some of the stories just really impacted me. And it had a lot to do with the interviews that I did. I remember doing an interview with one mom who her son had cancer, a little boy, and he did pass away from the cancer, and that was after many years of enduring treatments. And just talking with her about it, I wanted to do more for her. I also, because of the nature of my job, I had this office that was basically a closet. But it was like soundproof because I did these interviews, and I did not like being in the office by myself. So I ended up going to graduate school at Georgia State, which is right in the heart of Atlanta, for a master's degree in counseling. What was I into? Reading and gosh, what was I into in college? I think during my undergrad, I was really just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I majored in different things. I majored in mass communications, I think was what it was called, and then switched to English. I wanted to be a Major League Baseball commentator because I didn't like that there were no women in the booths. And I had an opportunity. I got an internship with a I don't even know the terms anymore because I don't really watch it that much, but 1A ball, I don't know if that's what they call it, but it was this league up in New York, and they called me and they said, we want you to come up here and do this internship. We have a place for you to stay with a local family, but you have to drive up to New York by yourself. Well, you don't have to do it by yourself, but it was pretty much going to be by myself within the next 2 or 3 days. And I remember having the conversation with my dad, and he was like, if you want to go, we'll make it happen. And I decided I didn't want to. And I do always think about that, what things would have been different. And I think for the most part, it's not a regret. It's just one of those things that you think, oh, what would have happened? And there's still not, are there any women in the booth? Like, they are put in the dugout to ask questions, but they're not like in the booth doing play-by-play. That's what I would want. In college, what were you into? I mean, I was into the writing scene, the creative writing scene, and reading. I would go to like book readings, things like that. Yeah, that's kind of more of what I was into. Do I have any other hobbies? I do. I actually used to run an animal rescue group. I did that for about 5 years. I've volunteered. I rescued my first dog when I was 9, and then would rescue the stray kitten when I was in college, and started volunteering for a pet rescue right out of undergrad. In downtown Atlanta, there was this group that would have adoption days right outside of Barnes and Noble. And I would go to the Barnes and Noble, and I'm such an introvert that it took me a while. I would go to Barnes and Noble, I would play with the dogs, but I wouldn't talk to anyone, and then would go in, look around the bookstore or whatever. And then I started volunteering with them. And yeah, it just kind of went from there. And I did do a good bit of babysitting and pet sitting while I was in college and after. It was a nice little side hustle to do. And I had been a pet sitter for my boss at the time, who has written some books, Mary Laura Philpott. She's written a couple of memoirs, and she had beagles, and I used to pet sit her beagles, and it introduced me to the beagle breed. And yeah, that kind of went from there. And I went to volunteer one day, and they had this litter of beagle puppies that had been dumped in a shelter, and I took the one, played with the one that was biting everybody, and that was Charlie. I'm gonna put a picture of him here. That was my first beagle. And then I just ended up, he had separation anxiety, horrible separation anxiety. So I ended up getting him a beagle buddy, which is Bailey. And that didn't help his separation anxiety, but we all fell in love with Bailey. So I found that I was really good at fundraising. And so I planned a fundraiser. At the time, the Beagle Rescue was run by a husband and wife, and they really didn't have a lot of help. So I said, I'm scheduling this, planning this. Can you be there? Can you bring the dogs? Okay. So they showed up. We did a fundraiser, and I just started volunteering with them, and eventually ended up taking over when the couple that was doing it didn't want to do it anymore. They were moving on to other things. So yeah, I ran that for about 5 years. And when my mom got sick, I couldn't handle taking care of her and running the rescue. So a friend of mine took it over. So I've always loved dogs since I was little, and would foster them. I've probably fostered, I don't know, more than 50 dogs over the time and a couple of cats. I don't do that as much, mainly because when I was taking care of my mom, it was hard to go. Any extra energy I had, you know, I would go to bookstores or something like that. Um, while I was taking care of her, my health got worse. And so I haven't really gotten a chance to get out and get more into hobbies again. I do enjoy writing still, and I do enjoy artwork. I love going to the mountains, which I've done a vlog. Have I done a vlog from the mountains? I think I've done a vlog. If I have, I'll link it below. And I really love to travel. I love to do road trips. So I'm hoping to do more of those soon once I can get more energy. So yeah, those are kind of my other hobbies. They kind of all center around the book world too, but yeah. As a mood reader, how do you pick your books? Honestly, I usually just look at the bookshelf and kind of see, do I want a thriller? Do I want something with more depth? Do I want something that's going to be quick and easy? Do I want something I'm familiar with? Do I want to do a reread? Which I did at the beginning of this year. I did a reread of Ethan Frome. It was a book I hadn't read since I was in college, and it did like my rating of it was different than when I was in college. But I also read a couple of Edith Wharton's short stories, and they were 5 stars for me. And so far, some of my favorites of the year. So I say that it's the end of January, but still. So yeah, I tend to just, and I've done it. I just stand in front of the bookshelf, or I'll go to the library. I go to the library a lot. And I like to just walk the stacks, just kind of see what jumps out at me. Sometimes I'll go certain areas, like if it's an author I know that I kind of want to maybe look to see if they have a backlist or something like that. Um, who's my favorite author? Goodness. I have so many. I feel like Alice Feeney is probably one of my favorite. Quick, easy thrillers to read. You're going to read it quick. Um, you're going to think you can figure it out, but you can't. I think one of my favorite classic authors is Edith Wharton, um, Agatha Christie. Trying to think. Some of my favorite books that I read before I was on BookTube that are more contemporary are The Memory of Animals by Claire Fuller, An American Marriage by Tayari Jones. Not as contemporary, but still an amazing, heartbreaking novel. Is The Color Purple by Alice Walker. I had seen the movie before I read it, and then I read the book, and it's just amazing. Oh yeah, Maggie O'Farrell. I do really like Maggie O'Farrell, and my introduction to Maggie O'Farrell was her memoir, I Am. So I really love her memoir. Yeah, I'm kind of, again, that might be depends on the day kind of thing. Probably about 10 or so years ago, maybe more than that actually. Um, I had a book club with some folks at my church, and that was probably the longest that I'd ever had a book club. And the first book that we read was Anna Karenina. To start off a book club with a thick Russian classic. I liked that book. I know that some people don't, but if you look at it, Tolstoy, without the political rants, are political and religious rants that he goes on, are some of them are relevant, some of them are not, some of them are just like, that was writers' outlet of the time to get their thoughts out. They didn't have social media, so that's what they had to talk about, their thoughts on these things. Some of them you can glaze over. So I think from there we read it. We kind of just let whoever pick, whoever's turn it was to pick a novel, and we started reading some of the Pulitzer Prize winning books, and I think my favorite of all those was The Color Purple, by Alice Walker. And yeah, definitely. Even more so, I think Edith Wharton won for that Age of Innocence, even more so than that. So yeah, that's some of my favorite authors. What's something new you're going to do in year 2? This is a great question from my friend Molly. I don't know. I hope to get better with filming, with sound, with audio, and with outside noises, like when my dog decides to start pacing around with the toy in her mouth while I'm recording. That's kind of behind the scenes. I would like to do more road trips, travel vlogs. I think that's probably the thing that I'd like to do the most. And maybe travel vlogs to meet some of my BookTube friends. That would be awesome. But yeah, that's probably the thing I'm looking forward to do most. I do want to say just what this means to me, having an outlet to talk about books, to keep me accountable for my book reading. I think keep me on track. I feel like I could potentially get into that reading slump and not come out of it without the encouragement from my friends, the buddy reads with my friends, the book club books, things like that. I love doing book clubs, and I've tried some in person locally. They either haven't lasted, like the group as a whole hasn't lasted, or I just have health flares and I can't go. And that's a frustrating thing for me, that like there are things that I want to go do, and then if my chronic illness flares, it's hard to do some of those things. A lot of them meet at night, which I'm not. That's probably the least energy I have because I do work full time. So I do my full time hours, and then I'm usually just exhausted by then. So yeah, this is a huge connection for me. You also were here for me when I lost Remy earlier in the fall. And I connected to I connected to BookTube when my mom was sick and the pandemic happened and everything shut down and I wasn't going to the office anymore. And after she passed away, I started getting involved in book club, Patreon groups, things like that. And it was a great connection because at the time, and still, I'm going in these fluctuations with my health that really keep me connected. And that's a huge, huge thing for people with disabilities, that keep them kind of isolated from the rest of the world. It's a huge thing. I hope also in year two to kind of branch out a little bit in that respect of talking more about disability awareness, chronic illness, things like that. I know um, I don't, uh, I know I talk about it in my vlogs and in my videos sometimes, but I haven't done much um, specifically to disability awareness, which is probably because it's also what I do for work. So I don't know. Sometimes you kind of get overwhelmed with it all. So that's the end of the questions. And I just want to say thank you so much for being here. And I hope you come back. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Leave any additional questions in the comments below. Happy to answer them in another upcoming video. I hope you all are doing well. And yeah, I'm going to get back to reading. See y'all soon. Bye.